Imagine this, a family of four cramped on a single scooter, weaving through chaotic traffic under the scorching sun, dreaming of something better, something safer, something that feels like dignity on wheels. Now freeze that image, because what happened next didn't just change how Indians traveled, it rewrote the entire economic destiny of millions of families, and the financial ripple effects are so massive that Wall Street analysts are still trying to wrap their heads around it. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. The very thing that lifted millions out of poverty is now facing an existential threat that could unravel everything. If you're ready to discover how a simple four-wheeled box became the vehicle of hope for an entire nation and why its survival matters to the global economy, smash that like button right now and subscribe, because this story will change how you see affordable transportation forever. Hey, this is Mark, and you're welcome to AUTOSAYS. So let's rewind to the late 90s, when India was a completely different world. The economy was just opening up, foreign brands were flooding in with their expensive sedans and SUVs, and for the average Indian family earning maybe $200 a month, owning a car was literally as impossible as buying a private jet. We're talking about a time when a basic car cost more than what most families would earn in 5 years of hard work. The streets were dominated by scooters and motorcycles, entire families balancing on 2 wheels because that's all they could afford, and every monsoon season became a dangerous gamble with lives at stake. But here's where it gets interesting from a financial perspective. Indian entrepreneurs saw something the big global automakers completely missed. They didn't see poor people who couldn't afford cars. They saw millions of aspiring middle-class families who were desperate to upgrade, who were saving every rupee, cutting every corner, postponing every luxury just to afford 4 walls on wheels. The question wasn't whether Indians wanted cars. The question was, could anyone build a car cheap enough that wouldn't bankrupt these families but still keep them safe? Enter the revolution that nobody believed was possible. Maruti Suzuki dropped a bombshell in the market with the Maruti 800, and suddenly the game changed completely. This wasn't just another car launch, this was financial engineering meets automotive innovation. The sticker price was slashed to a point where a middle-class family could actually see a path to ownership, maybe not immediately, but within reach if they saved aggressively for a year or two. But here's the genius move that transformed everything: the financing options. Indian banks, which traditionally never touched auto loans for small cars because they considered the borrowers too risky, suddenly started seeing the massive market potential. Payment plans emerged that let families put down maybe 10 or 15% and spread the rest over 5 years. Now pause and think about what this meant financially. A family earning $300 a month could suddenly allocate maybe $60 or $70 toward a car payment. And yes, it was tight. Yes, it meant sacrifices, but it was doable. The psychological shift was enormous, because for the first time, the poor and lower middle class weren't being told, this isn't for you. They were being told, save a little more, work a little harder, and this dream is yours. And guess what? Millions took that bet. But here's where the story takes a darker turn that most people don't talk about. The rise of small cars created a massive debt culture that India had never experienced before. Families who barely had savings were suddenly leveraging their futures, taking on 5-year loans with interest rates that would make your eyes water, sometimes 15 to 18% annually. The math was brutal. Buy a car for $6,000, and by the time you finish paying, you've actually paid $9,000 because of the interest. Some families made it work. They upgraded their income, used the car to start small businesses, taxi services, delivery operations. The car became an asset that generated cash flow, and suddenly the debt made sense. But others, they got crushed. When unexpected medical bills hit or when the primary earner lost their job, that monthly car payment became a financial noose. Repossession rates spiked, families lost not just their cars, but their dignity, their credit scores destroyed for years. Wait, because there's another layer to this that's absolutely wild. The small car revolution didn't just impact individual families. It fundamentally restructured India's entire economy in ways that are still playing out today. Think about the supply chain. Suddenly, you had massive demand for steel, rubber, plastics, electronics, all sourced domestically because keeping costs low was everything. thousands of small and medium factories popped up across India, employing millions of workers who were making components for these affordable cars. Towns that were agricultural backwaters suddenly became manufacturing hubs, and the wealth distribution started shifting from a few major cities to smaller towns. The multiplier effect was insane. One car factory would spawn 50 supplier factories, which would create jobs for 10,000 people who would then spend money on housing, food, education, creating even more economic activity. Economists estimated that for every direct job in auto manufacturing, 7 indirect jobs were created in the ecosystem. But here's the financial catch that's now coming back to haunt everyone. This entire boom was built on a model of continuous growth, the assumption that every year more families would climb into the middle class and buy their first car, that financing would remain easy, that fuel would stay affordable. And for 2 decades, that's exactly what happened. Sales went vertical every year, setting new records, and India became one of the largest small car markets on the planet. Auto companies were printing money, dealers were expanding everywhere, and the financing arms of these companies became profit machines in themselves, because those interest payments were pure gold. But then everything started cracking, and nobody was prepared for what came next. Environmental regulations tightened because Indian cities became some of the most polluted on Earth, and suddenly the government started pushing electric vehicles hard, talking about banning internal combustion engines. The families who had just bought their small petrol cars on 5-year loans started panicking. Would their cars become worthless before the loan was even paid off? Resale values started dropping as uncertainty spread, and people who were planning to sell their old car to finance the next one found themselves underwater, owing more on the loan than the car was worth. Then fuel prices started spiking globally, and suddenly that affordable car wasn't so affordable to run anymore. Families who had budgeted for cheap fuel were now spending double or triple, and that car payment that seemed manageable was now suffocating. Here's where it gets really emotional. Imagine being that family who sacrificed everything, who saved for years, who took on debt with the promise that this car would transform their lives, and now you're stuck with a depreciating asset, a loan you can't escape, and running costs that are bleeding you dry. The dream that was supposed to lift you up is now dragging you down. So what happens next? The Indian small car story is now at a crossroads, and the financial implications are staggering, not just for India, but for the entire global automotive industry. Because here's what most people miss. India was the testing ground for affordable mobility for the masses, and if the model fails here, it has massive implications for every developing country in Africa, Southeast Asia, and South America, where billions of people are still waiting for their chance at car ownership. The automakers are scrambling right now, trying to figure out how to build electric small cars that are affordable, because the technology is still expensive. A decent electric vehicle costs 3 times what a small petrol car costs, and no amount of government subsidies can bridge that gap quickly enough. The financing model is also breaking down because banks are getting nervous about lending against vehicles that might be obsolete or unsellable in 5 years. And families, they're stuck in this horrible limbo, unable to afford the new technology, but also unable to stick with the old because running costs and regulations are making it impossible. But wait, because there's actually a glimmer of hope that's emerging from the chaos, and it's coming from the most unexpected place. The used car market in India is exploding right now, and here's why it's brilliant from a financial perspective. Families are realizing they don't need a brand new car with a crushing loan. They can buy a 3 or 4-year-old small car for half the price, pay cash, or take a much smaller loan and avoid the depreciation hit that comes with buying new. The first owner takes the financial beating, losing maybe 40% of the value in the first 3 years, and the second owner gets a reliable car at a price that actually makes sense. This is creating a whole new ecosystem of certified used car dealers, inspection services, and shorter-term financing that's less risky for everyone involved. And here's the really cool part. It's keeping those older small cars on the road longer, which means families who bought them years ago can actually get decent resale value, which helps them pay off their loans and maybe even upgrade to something better or even transition to electric when it becomes affordable. The circular economy is starting to work in ways nobody planned for, but it's solving real problems. So what's the lesson here for anyone watching from America or anywhere else in the developed world? It's easy to look at India's small car story as some distant tale that doesn't affect you, but you'd be completely wrong. Because the financial model is being stress tested in India right now, the questions about sustainable transportation, about how to provide mobility without crushing people with debt, about how to transition to new technology without destroying the value of existing assets, these are questions every country is going to face in the next decade. The American auto loan bubble is massive right now, with people taking 7- and 8-year loans on vehicles that will be worthless before they're paid off, and the switch to electric is going to create the same resale value chaos that India is experiencing right now. The difference is that Indians have been forced to innovate and adapt because they don't have the luxury of ignoring the problem. And there are lessons in that struggle that could save millions of American families from making the same mistakes. Here's the final twist that brings everything full circle. Those families on scooters that we talked about at the beginning,
many of them did get their car. They did achieve that dream. And for a few golden years, it really did transform their lives. They drove their kids to better schools. They expanded their businesses. They felt the pride and dignity that comes with ownership. But now they're facing new challenges, navigating a changing world where the rules keep shifting, and they're doing it with the same resilience and creativity that got them the car in the first place. The story isn't over, it's evolving, and whether it ends in triumph or tragedy depends on decisions being made right now by governments, automakers, banks, and families themselves. What's absolutely certain is that India's small car revolution was never just about transportation. It was always about hope, about the fundamental human desire to climb higher, to give your children more than you had, to prove that you matter. And that's a story that transcends borders, cultures, and economic systems. So if this video changed how you think about cars, about debt, about dreams, and the price we pay for them, show some love by hitting that like button and subscribing to AUTOSAYS, because we're diving deep into the stories that matter, the ones that connect the dots between individual struggles and massive global shifts. Drop a comment and tell me, would you take on serious debt for a dream, or is financial security more important than aspiration? Let's talk about it, because your perspective matters. And who knows, maybe your comment will be the one that helps someone else figure out their own path forward. Until next time, stay curious, stay critical, and remember that every financial decision you make is really a bet on the future you believe in.